6:05.
Ready? Call the meeting to order. And call the roll.
Chair Maloney,
Here.
Commissioner Austin, Commissioner Barlow,
Here.
Commissioner Mandigo, Commissioner Rocknet, Commissioner Spitzlove. Here. Commissioner Vitola,
Here.
Councilmember Shi. You have a quorum?
Okay. Do we have any correspondence?
No.
No hate mail from Facebook or, okay. Can we get a motion to approve the minutes for our main meeting, which is on the back of the agenda? Oh, look who's here.
So moved.
Mark, Mr. Austin is present, please.
I motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, do we have any discussion about the minutes? Back.
That's good.
Good? Okay, since we have no discussion, call the vote.
Chair Maloney,
I'm good.
Commissioner Austin,
Aye.
Commissioner Barlow,
Abstain because I was here.
Commissioner Spitzlove. Aye. Commissioner Vitola.
Aye.
Passes.
Okay. We're not on YouTube Live?
You are on YouTube Live.
It's not showing on my YouTube page here.
I'm looking right at the connection.
Not that I'm checking on your work or anything, but I like to see my profile.
This is my
No,
office hour.
Yes, I do. That's why I make those random movements. Like,
Oh, showed you live right on the YouTube channel too.
Refresh a couple of times, maybe.
Yeah, go back to City of Oneonta. There was the glitch with Zoom. We had to go the Plan B route.
Photographs, oh, it says live. Here we go. Hey, there we are. Okay.
We're living in the past, Jim.
I am living in the past right here. Okay, old business utility box location map. I added that to the master plan. And I learned how to add PDFs to Google Docs in the course of that. It was very, very illuminating. I haven't heard back from NICEAG. I'll email them again. I assume that they were busy before with the storms and stuff we had last month. The public-private mural location map, I added there. If you take a look, if anyone had a chance to take a look at the master plan, I added in some words. In fact, I'll just call it up here and describe what I added in. If no one had a chance to look at it.
So these are maps of existing things?
Right, Ian and Andrew did a map of utility boxes and possible mural locations. Yes.
Okay.
And I added that in. The city wanted a little bit more specific plan. And as we really still in development, I gave them what we had in here. Councilmember Lepar Shu was really happy with it. The mayor commented he liked it too. I would like to tighten it up a little bit more. But what I did, basically, I added that map in, I added a link to the map so you can download it on your computer. It's got utility boxes, electrical boxes, large walls by overpasses, and public downtown mural sites. I put in some descriptions of what an art walk could look like. And if you want, I could just read the high points here. It could be different formats, such as hub and spoke, or by ward neighborhood, or a sculpture and mural walk. They can be linked by thematic elements. The hub and spoke walk could be Oneonta themed to feature sculptures and murals that link past and present uses of public spaces as focal points, moving economic and cultural traffic to and from the city center. The ward and neighborhood-centric art show that we use to illustrate the development of neighborhoods based on socioeconomic needs of the new residents, the development of economic drivers of expansion, and development and expansion of Oneonta from an unincorporated Oneonta Plains to Hamlet in the 1800s to incorporation of the city in 1908. We can partner with the Greater Oneonta Historical Society to help identify the development and track the changes in neighborhoods and the influences of those changes. Some potential thematic ideas that I came up with could be like the 5 nations of the Iroquois Confederacy through today. I mean, just everything that we have a historical record of. Railroad town to normal school. We started as a railroad town, and they built a normal school at the top of Main Street. And basically, teachers were trained, people who wanted to be teacher trainees took train here, hopped on a trolley from what is now, or was, what's the restaurant down there?
Oh, no.
Yes, and they would take a trolley from there up Maple Street to the normal school. And then another one was the famous people. I mean, if we wanted to do a sculpture walk, we could do famous people from the Fairchilds. The Masons Lodge is the Fairchild Mansion. Through the Wilburs up into somebody who just passed away, Sammy Dallas Bays, who's a Tony-nominated choreographer or playwright or director. I'm not sure which. I read his obituary recently in All At Sea Go. And that would include the people we've been talking about, Al Galadoro, Jerry Jeff Walker, maybe even Paul Rubens, and I'm sure there are other notables, previous to our existence here that may be appropriate for this. We could do something on neighborhood development and identity and how that's developed and changed. The 6th Ward was where all the railroad workers lived, and the historic downtown center city, like Walnut Street, like from Maplewood Church, where the fancy folk, the mansions there. And then you had, farmland that was around it, and our urban sprawl kept on encroaching upon that. And then another thing we could do is natural resources within the city of the hills. We do local artists who either grew up here, lived here, were inspired by here.
So is the idea here that these are themes that we would encourage artists to make works around?
We
or
could.
that we would require? Or?
Well, we don't have to require. I mean, I was throwing ideas on paper, just from my own experience here. And I would suggest that you guys take a look at this and add to it.
Yeah. Because I guess my thought is that I would like to, throw this information to artists to think about, but I'd like the artists to make whatever it is they want to make, and maybe we approve it
Right.
based on whether it fits these things. But I think it could be fine to have a piece of public art that doesn't have anything to do with
No, I
history
agree.
place too.
Right.
But I do think this would be a great way to key a map once you have, 10 works of public art. You could have the 3 that are local history and the 3, whatever. You could have a,
Well, like I've always said, I'm relying on the artists in the room to come up with ideas.
yeah.
I think that...
I think these are all great ideas. I just wouldn't want any kind of requirement or expectation that all the public
Look,
art.
I'm just throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks here.
Okay.
And the last thing I had was the impact of historic or current economic foci. Like how, is it foci or foci? My wife told me this the other day.
Oh, I don't know. I thought it was foci because in Latin, C is hard.
Okay.
But I don't know. I took 1 year of Latin.
Well, it works. That's one more year than me.
Yeah.
I just had brothers yelling at me in Latin.
Oh.
Yeah.
So fancy.
So these are just potential thematic ideas that I jotted down
Yeah.
while I was trying to fill this portion out. But I would urge everyone to take a look at it, because at some point we need to present this to council, and we need to come up with an idea of how we're going to do not only a master plan, but how we're going to approach the master plan. Are we going to have just random pieces of art all over the city, which is fine by me, because I like a little voyage of discovery and surprise? Or do we do things that are a little bit more planned out and say, this portion of Neola Park is going to be famous people from Oneonta. And this portion of, like, from Center City out in 5 directions, we're going to look at the development of the city of Oneonta around wherever it started, the grist mill in the East End, or the railroad tracks, whatever. So this is a rough outline I threw out. I'd love it if everyone could contribute. Okay. Okay. The other thing I have at the end is art for art's sake. And I sort of cobbled together a couple of explanations. And I said, this philosophy separates art from its relation to the community and provides standalone ideas to be regarded and interpreted by the viewer without the context of concept. An art trail can simply be a walkway through our historic cityscape, open parklands punctuated by objects of contemplation.
I think one thing that I wonder about as a way of framing, thinking about these things is the public art here to just serve our own community here, or is it something that people will come here for in a way? You know?
Exactly.
And if it is something that's a destination for art lovers to come and check out this city that's got a bunch of interesting public art in it, does it have broader appeal if there's some art for art's sake and not just local history? I would think that that would be more appealing, even though I would also expect there to be things that riffed on local history too. And so I guess as an artist, I would think having some of this like potted history you've given us, which is fantastic, available on the website for any artist who's proposing to look and be like, oh, these are things I could think about. But I'm leery of any kind of requirement about that. But then, as I said, like once we have a few things, we can look at the themes we've got, and if we do make a public art map, we can color code where the local history is, or where the art for art's sake is, or you could generate different walks that took different themes.
rides or whatever.
Or, and then I guess the other thing I wonder in the master plan, I don't know if this is quite in there, is like the kinds of calls we're doing for art. You know, we've talked about various sorts of things.
Some stuff in that talks about it, whether it be donations or whether we seek out someone specifically, or if it's just an open call, like here's what we want, you know, here's the wall, everyone apply.
Right.
Is that what you're asking?
Kind of, yeah. I feel like one thing that I would like to see in the document is this is just how I think about it, I guess, is structures for different ways of applying. Like, are we going to have a temporary sculpture walk like Cherry Valley? Is that a thing we do biannually or something? And if so, that's a different kind of call than the mural where we find a wall and then we put out the call, and that, again, that may be every 3 years there's a wall we can offer.
Yeah.
And then like the utility boxes, maybe that's something we can do every year because that's quicker and cheaper. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to, as part of this document, put in like tiered kinds of calls.
That is our job.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what I'm asking us
Or
to.
maybe a committee of one do. Just, if you could outline something like that, like just exactly what you said,
Sure.
that will give everybody else an opportunity to look at it on your computer screen and maybe jot down ideas based on it.
Sure. And when I think about that too, then if there was, I mean, you could annually have a theme to your electrical box call.
Mhm.
You know, if you wanted.
Right.
And not be committed to that as.
It doesn't have to be all electric boxes.
Sure. Or if you had the Cherry Valley style sculpture walk, again, that could be just, hey sculptors, do you have a big heavy thing you'd like to put somewhere? You know, which,
Or even create something on site. Or, I mean,
or
like
it
they do
could
at
be,
Festival of Lights.
we would like this to deal with the Five Nations, you know.
Right.
One thing that I think would also be important to bring up is that probably a lot of artists will respond to a space, so it would be like
Yes.
site-specific.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was a mural, or what they would be responding to the way the wall is set, where the openings are, how the light hits it, you know. So,
And like the history of that building, I
Or the
would think
history
too,
of
or
that
that
street.
street.
so that would be interesting to, you know, include some phrase, site-specific inspiration
Mm-hmm.
based on the physical space or the historic meaning of the place, or, you know, whatever.
Right. I agree with that. That's great.
Because I think a lot of artists respond to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think if we had a wall in mind, for instance, this is where it would be great to have a photo of that and the history of that building and that ward's history or whatever that
Mhm.
you just were describing that someone might riff on or might not.
Right.
And another thing I've seen too is, you know, creating illusions, optical illusions, or creating the illusion of a different space where you transform the space
Mhm.
through a mural or through.
Right. And that would be great on those overpass walls where, you know, it's industrial looking, and then
Yeah.
change it to something naturalistic.
I think that'd be really great for something like Foothills, because that whole building is flat, but it's also broken up into so many different sized panels.
Right.
where it's like, I mean, that building itself is really the center of a lot of things. It's like, okay, performing arts, so you can have panels with famous performing art people on it. You know, I mean, there's like thin strips, there's big, long, fat strips, and it's like, you know, it's right where the railroad was and the factory was. You know, it's right downtown, so it's like, there's so many different panels where, you know, you could have one little thin strip up here, and that happens to be the railroad one, and one, you know, it's like,
That would be cool.
you know, it could be sort of a, kind of a catch-all for the local history aspect. I was in Pennsylvania a couple weeks ago, and, you know, we're sort of talking about themes. And the town I was in, they had a citywide theme of wildflowers. So, you know, I mean, you walk down an alley and there are, you know, 30-foot dandelions, and, you know, these plants that cover the whole sides of buildings, but it's like, it's vibrant and artful enough, but not site-specific. I mean, you know, I was looking at, the ones I responded to were not the historic murals, because most of the historic murals that I was seeing were basically colorized black and white photos. And it's like, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that, but as a visitor to that place, I don't connect with that. You know, that's not to say there isn't a place for it, but I think, yeah, really kind of looking into what are we trying to do in terms of, yeah, who are we trying to, there's art for the city folk who live here, who are proud of their heritage, but then there's art for the people coming in. You know, I mean, the fact that, you know, James is doing, you know, animals of our region. You know, I mean, animals come in all shapes and sizes. They're not offensive. You know, I mean, the fact that he has so many different ones all over that building is absolutely fantastic. And it's like, if you can just kind of close your eyes and like pick one of those and like place it like, you know, somewhere else around town. It's like, you know, when I drive down Main Street and I just happen to glance down Market Street, I can see that raccoon from a distance. And it's like, I don't need to know the context. I see that for a second and it makes me happy. You know, because it doesn't have any sort of,
There's no.
I hesitate to use the word agenda.
But, no, you could.
But it's just like, I mean, you know, it might be a simple rudimentary reaction like, oh, an animal, but
Yeah.
I still find it a positive one.
Yeah, I have a similar experience. You know, Jim and I went to Albany to look at the murals there, and I've driven in quite a few
Did you
times.
see the one of the elk?
I'm not sure if it's
Basically, it's like on a brick wall, and it's an elk, and it's surrounded by like a blue square, but they used the coloration of the bricks as the color of the elk.
But the thing that strikes me is Albany, you know, capital city, is exactly the kind of place where you'd think there'd be a lot of historical worthy, you know, important people stuff. None of it is. It's like geometric patterns, bright colors, bluebirds flying across a parking garage, an elk, you know.
Some of it just looks like stonework until you
Sure,
look
yeah.
closely and you realize it's just painting.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it always appeals to me a lot. Again, when I drive in and see some bluebirds on a parking garage,
Yeah.
I think I'd probably like that more than Nelson Rockefeller on the side of the building or something, you know.
Oh, here's a looker.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, but it is, you know, less my type, you know.
Okay. So let's flesh this out on the master plan. Everyone's got a link to it, or should have a link to it. If you need me, I'll resend it to everybody again, so it's fresh.
Again, I think the history that you ran through would be, as an artist, would be a great thing. Like if I was applying and I'm not from Oneonta, and what is this place?
Right.
And then you can think about whether or not.
Do you, actually, can we add that to the survey?
I was thinking that.
Let's add like something about, like,
Historical murals.
what do you think could be memorialized? What historical events or people could be memorialized in a mural?
Yeah, or
Or-
even sculptures or
Right.
whatever, yeah.
Because then we get some more ideas. I'm a newcomer to Oneonta. I only moved here in 1990. I didn't grow up here, so I don't
You wanna
know.
focus- sorry.
I only know the history from, what's that?
You want to focus on local historical?
Yeah. I mean, it's just as a part of, not necessarily a thematic element, but like thematic ideas that artists can use or mine for ideas to do.
So not just important individuals, but history and people that
Yes.
you'd want to see commemorated.
Yeah.
And maybe for the question, what type of art you want to see, have one of them just be art for art's sake. Something
Yeah.
really general, sort of like that.
There was, I remember hearing talk like years ago about the idea of possibly putting like some sort of like grandstand, not a massive one, but some sort of bandstand or something in Muller Plaza.
Yes, there
Would
was
that fall under this?
that. I don't know if it's going to fall under this.
Well, okay, so what if someone came in, because since the rails ran right there, and there's already the rails are bricks.
Yeah.
What if someone made a bandstand that was in the shape of a trolley car? Would that fall under our jurisdiction because, or not jurisdiction, but would that fall under this because it's,
It may only because it won't fall under anything else. Or it may fall under Parks and Rec, because it's a park, so it's park property. It may be a collaborative effort between the two of us, the two organizations, or the city agency and our commission. One of the things that Doug Decker talked about, when he was here, did he come here and do a presentation? Because, no, he did it at, Community Conversations, I almost called it what I usually called it, where he talked about how the previous mayors had liked the idea of dedicating a bandstand in Muller Plaza. Dick Miller and Gary Herzig. And Gary Herzig said they may be able to find money in a budget to do it, and gave him a dollar amount, but that was the previous mayor. So he's got to bring that up with Mayor Drenick to see if that's still a doable idea. And now I think that there are two competing ideas. One is a bandstand for Jerry Jeff Walker, and one is a bandstand for Al Galladoro. And both of these things have some outside funding. So, again, I don't know if this is gonna be our gig or the Parks Department's gig and the city administrator and the mayor. So we can certainly keep our ears open and listen for it and maybe contribute to the conversation. But I think Muller Plaza is awful tiny for a bandstand.
it is, yeah.
I mean, you know,
Unless you just actually get rid of the Clarion.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, get rid of that, open the road up back
No,
there to
it's
Stella
not.
Luna,
right, build a street back down that way, like it used to be.
Yeah.
line it with some old 19th century looking
Buildings.
buildings.
That have apartments and mercantile first floors and, yeah.
That's crazy. No
That's-
way.
That was one of the things, one of the history things I learned about Oneonta when I first moved here. It's like, you know, they had this big urban development push. In fact, the Wilbur Mansion was slated to be demolished under that. And a big community outcry saved it. But Broad Street was flattened and it was left empty. This was done in the 70s. It was empty until probably when Kim Muller was in office, when they finally put something there.
And that's where the Clarion is now.
Yeah.
That's what the Clarion is, yeah.
So they modernized that real good.
Yeah. But then you have to worry about parking too.
Right. That's true.
Speaking of buildings with big panels, the Clarion, it's private, or it's a business. Have we talked to them about potentially,
I haven't, no. The front and rear are covered in windows, but the sides have limited, I mean, it may be a perfect thing actually, the sides, because they have limited views. The one side's only visible from South Main Street here, next to this, and the other side's visible from Water Street. But only partially, and Market Street as you're driving by. That may be an option too. Maybe we have to ask, I think it's a privately owned hotel, it's not a chain.
Mm.
So, they may be amenable to that. But what we have to figure out, what we have to explain to people is that we don't have money for the maintenance of that mural. Once it's on your building, it's yours, you have to maintain it. And then once they decide they don't like it, they can just paint over it. Which is fine, I mean, art is temporary.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, there was Vita Brothers, but okay.
Doesn't have to be.
Ars longa vita brevis, isn't it?
More than that.
So, okay. Well, that was the first agenda item.
Okay.
That actually covered most of the agenda. I mean, we can hash out the public-private mural location map that's in there, Neil Park statue location map. I did not put that in there, but, you know, anywhere along the roads except for like all the war memorials down that center road. Which, is that where Lou wanted to put the dog memorial?
I thought that was gonna be by the dog park.
Right by the dog park. Okay. Has Lou come up with any funding for that? Okay. All right. Are they gonna disinter the dogs in Lower Park and move them down there?
What?
Are they gonna dig up the
Oh,
dogs?
fire truck, I don't know.
Oh.
Are they actually
There was-
buried or just-
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, oh, they're actually,
Oh, those ones, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. What do they skip and?
Spot or something?
No, it wasn't Spot. Sparky, no.
Sparky, yeah.
Fender, ash.
Cinder. Yeah. Whiskey and rye, I don't know.
That's it.
Public safety, the fire chief, well, this was brought up by,
Andrew Hammond,
Andrew Hamill, who's on the
Board of Public Service.
Board of Public Service, to do some sort of mural on a public safety building. I contacted the fire chief and he thought, you know, maybe a policeman and a firefighter, a police officer and firefighter saluting the flagpole. So I asked him to send me a picture of the exact location and we'll see where it goes from there. He was gonna communicate with the police chief too. I think last time we talked about the Foothills mural featuring local entertainment notables on the side of the Foothills. I'm looking at you because you brought up the Foothills moments ago.
I think it's great.
You think it's great?
Do it.
Okay, you want to contact Foothills, the board?
Who's head of the board?
I'll look on their website. Actually, last time I looked, they hadn't changed anything.
Is it Cassandra?
Who?
Her last name, Cassandra, she's
No.
on, yeah.
Cassandra Miller, I think she may be the secretary. I'm not sure if she's still on the board.
She just today announced taking a full-time job at the Munson Williams Proctor.
Oh, she got that, good for her.
Yeah, so I don't know if that'll be an ongoing.
I mean, I have Jeff's number. Jeff would be able to tell me.
There you go. Interesting.
Jeff.
There,
And so who would the local entertainment notables be? Jerry Jeff Walker, Paul Rubens?
Just,
Paul, well, yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if Paul Rubens is
You
still.
want to save that for the theater?
Yeah. Al Galladoro,
I don't know who that is.
He's a jazz.
saxophone, no, clarinet.
Clarinet, I believe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he played at my wedding. He was in a Dixieland jazz band
Huh?
that,
Think of Sean Connery in a captain's hat.
Okay.
think of a chubby Sean Connery. He was 90 years old in a captain's hat.
Okay.
I do.
I've got a vivid picture, and we're gonna put that on the side of the foot.
Yes. Al Galladoro, he was a nice old man, he was really nice.
Yeah, I think it's
Is there any other notables from Oneonta? I thought Ned Beatty lived here for a while,
allegedly.
allegedly, okay.
That's it. It's like,
It was,
People come and go.
yeah, so maybe, I mean, that could be part of the survey, we can figure out what
Yeah.
other potables are from Oneonta.
yeah, you can just do the notables, but then just go along with the theme. You know, they can just be in the mural,
Right.
but not the entire thing.
I mean, you could do like, I mean, the Oneonta Theater has a long history of semi-famous performers too.
Sure. So it would be people
Right,
who
so-
performed here
Right.
over the years as well.
Yeah, there was Mark Simons had a thing in the Daily Star about how the Oneonta Theater was one of those stops on movie national tours. Where, you know, I don't know if there would be movie actors, I didn't recognize the names, but because they were doing a tour, promotional tour of the movie, they'd do a one-night showing and show up and sign autographs and,
when we were cleaning out that, like the dressing rooms, like behind a radiator, we found out like a handwritten sign to Red Skelton, like thanking him for his performance.
oh, nice.
Nice.
We've been there for
Red
like
Skelton, you're-
60 years.
Put him on the Foothills. Yeah.
But he's not from here though.
Yeah, but I guess that's the question, is that, does it have to be people from here, or could it just be celebrating the history of
Entertainment.
arts and culture coming through here?
Yeah. Then we squeeze Al Galador and Jeff Walker in there.
I'm still pulling for
But
people.
I want to see Sharon Jones up there too.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
Sharon, she played at the Odeon Theater. She's
Contemporary
Oh, you
soul
look, yeah,
singer.
Google that. She's amazing. She's
Sister
got,
John?
With the Dap Kings,
the Dap Kings, yeah.
Okay. All right, that's okay.
who
Is that
also
her name?
famously backed up Amy Winehouse on her Back to Black.
Yeah.
But their main singer was Sharon Jones.
Yeah. This is the kid who started a record company in Bushwick. I think he's from like Long Island or something like that. He was an audiophile and started getting all these old blues and soul singers back on the road. And he was just cold calling. Said, hey, I just started a record company in Brooklyn. You want to come and play? Do a demo or something like that. Some of them said yes. Yeah, Sharon Jones was a prison guard, I think, at the time.
That's right. Yeah.
When he hooked up with her. Got her back out. Yeah. So we talked about the public art survey. Poet laureate.
Yeah, that's me. I haven't been working on it, but I
That's
will
okay.
start.
Okay.
But I've been looking through other towns, others, and it seems to be a pretty consistent way of going about it. Put out the call, and I think the timeline would be the first thing I should come up with. I mean, would we want to start that this fall, when school starts up again?
I would
Put
say
out
so,
a call?
yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
And maybe make a decision by December? And how does everybody feel about having a senior poet laureate and somebody under the age of 18 or 21?
How long does the position of poet laureate last?
For some of the, I was looking at that too. Some towns did it every year, but a lot of them did it 2 years.
It seems like we would run through a lot of poets if we did it every year.
I think 2 years.
They make new poets every day.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but not all of them
I
are
never
here.
heard about them.
But I think if you're gonna put out a call and go through it, I think a 2-year term is kind of a nice.
I think so,
I-
because the other thing, I know I mentioned before that in St. Paul, they had like the poetry in the sidewalk
Yeah,
program, which
yeah, I love that.
I think would be great if we found a way to have the poet laureate interact with the public art.
Yeah.
And this wasn't actually a poet laureate, but I was just in Providence where they had a bunch of electrical box mural things. And some of them were local history about which tribe's land we were on and the birds of the region. But there was at least one that was a poem that someone had made into a sort of like graffiti style version of a poem on an electrical box. So part of me wonders if like somehow or another the poet laureate's work could be made public, either a temporary or permanent.
I think you had mentioned it.
And if we had a two-year term, it would be easier to find the opportunity to do something like that.
I think at one of our meetings, we had mentioned that we could possibly put a poetry in motion on the buses,
Yeah,
and we could also project it onto either sidewalks or walls, and then you could also get a few stores to cooperate and have the letters, like vinyl letters, going from store window to store window, So there's, with words, with typography, there's so many ways of getting it out
yeah.
there.
Like bronze panels and the ground.
You don't want anything too permanent, I don't think.
And expensive.
Yeah, bronze, yeah. But anything that is just more temporary.
Yeah, just stencil it in the crosswalk.
Yes.
I think permanent's fine though.
Yeah,
And then again, the St. Paul one, it was like letters pressed into the wet concrete of sidewalk
yeah.
panels, and that's a really pleasant surprise to be walking down the sidewalk, and all of a sudden there's one panel that has a poem on it.
Yeah, that is true.
Not that we have like miles and miles of sidewalks here, but
Enough.
There's a few getting redone right now. Here's your chance.
yeah.
Do one long pole on that guardrail on the Athletics Highway.
You don't want it to.
Oh, I know, that's the town. Yeah. That's the town.
Well, we can cut grooves into the street too and have it play music when you're driving by.
Yeah.
There we go.
I wonder how much, are there any billboards left anywhere, or are they all gone?
No, billboards.
Yes.
There's one right on top of Reds.
I wonder
Yeah.
how much it would cost just to have something printed and put up too.
Well, and that's another thing we might consider as far as public art. I know there are cities that have public art on billboards. You know, I don't know what it costs to rent a billboard for a month, but you can put out a call to artists to design something for the billboard on top of Reds. And
Right. But it's gotta be able to be read or comprehended in like 10 seconds
sure,
as you're driving by.
yeah, or walking. You know,
Walking, right, yeah.
Billboards are for all of us.
Okay.
I don't know what it costs to rent them though, if that's extortionate, but it is a way you can get a large painterly image that someone can make in their studio or design on their computer, and then they get this huge
Right.
image overlooking town, interacting with the town somehow.
Yeah, because right now, the first thing you see when you drive into town is, it's not okay to assault me,
Yeah, that's right.
which is an important message. It's
Right.
not what I'm
That's-
saying, but.
But, and there's
It's a bit of a
also,
bummer.
It's-
yeah, in the East End, there's one, you can go to college in Binghamton.
Oh, that's nice.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like you can go to, you can have like apartment style living in Binghamton.
Boo.
Yeah.
Funnel people that way.
That's right, they just keep getting, they drive and get out of the house. Keep going. Well, I know we have some poets at the colleges and either, you know, working or retired, living and dead, who have reached some notoriety. I don't know what it is because I'm not a poet.
Yeah, so would there be a call for poet laureate, and there'd be nominations from people in that field?
Stephanie Rontnack suggested somebody who lives in Franklin is a jurist or a juror for a call.
I mean, I think you could put out a call and people could apply to be the poet laureate, no? Or you think it would be
Well,
more
I
of a
guess
nomination?
I've never thought about it before. I guess it seems such a lofty post from the title. I assumed that there was some sort of nomination rather than an application process.
No, when I was looking through my different research, there was just information to apply. Like, but they would say certain criteria you would have had to have published, you would have to have
Okay.
blah, blah, blah. You know, there's certain criteria, and if you met that criteria, you can apply.
But then we would need to reach out to people that have enough knowledge to be a juror for.
Right,
for
and
that,
I would be of no use.
which is where I guess the
And this person.
people at the colleges come in.
Commemorate openings and special events or whatever it is.
And can the poet laureate be from?
That's their, I think they just have to perform their poetry or like spread their own poetry. I don't think they have to create for the town. A poet laureate, I think they just share they're honored by the town and they share their work with the town.
See, I often think of like the national poet laureates as writing something for the
Inauguration.
inauguration and stuff like that. So yeah, I
Maybe
Yeah,
it
I don't
does,
know.
I don't know.
and would a poet laureate need to be from the area or the state or the country, or is it anyone from anywhere who wants to be our poet laureate?
That is a good
I
question.
mean, it would be nice if they were from the area, or else we're gonna get another Life and Joy situation.
Ouch.
I didn't think it was that bad. I know that a lot of people are very sore about it. I mean, it's just, I mean, and maybe I'm just uncultured, but, you know, as someone who went to a lot of things in this city for a number of years with the newspaper, I don't recall someone going up and, you know, reciting something like
Right.
this during a lot of this stuff. And, you know, I'm not trying to knock poets by any means, you know. When you're talking about like finding text places, things like that, I think that's very cool. But I guess I'm still kind of unclear about exactly what they would do. And that seems like something, I don't know, more for something that's kind of larger than us, you know, like Baltimore. You know, like, I don't want to.
Well, like Syracuse has one, I know they're bigger, but Syracuse has one.
I think you sent out a bunch of stuff. One was the city of Albany, California, which had, the
Right.
poet laureate had to live or work in the location.
In the city.
Yeah.
Because again, then I wonder how many poets we've got, to rotate through every year or two, living within the city of Oneonta.
I think maybe if we made it a little broader, that you'd have to have something to do with the city of Oneonta, and that maybe you don't have to live here, but there
Drove through
is
once.
You know.
You could point at it on.
vacation here, went to school here, I don't know, I mean, maybe
Yeah,
some
maybe, like,
relationship.
those, you,
I mean, another thing you could consider doing is, I mean, the food and beverage center isn't up yet, obviously, but, I mean, you're familiar with Jones Soda, right?
Yep.
Okay, so Jones Soda basically puts calls out, it's like, submit your photos, we might put it on a bottle.
Yeah.
So, if we're talking about potentially approaching younger poets or whatever, then you can get and we're talking about cycling things through every year, every couple of years. If you could approach the beverage center about creating, a bottled drink, whatever it is, and it's like, okay, this year, this season features poetry by
Yeah,
this or this,
that's an
or
interesting
local art
idea.
by this and this. And then that's one more
Is
thing.
the beverage center producing things?
I don't know all the details of that. I'd have to
talking
check.
about the grain thing they're gonna put in the.
Great Innovation Center?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think
Yeah.
they don't make anything.
They're not like, it's not a bottling plant like
No,
that.
no, no.
No, it's like
Oh,
hybridizing grains to make drinks from,
okay.
as far as I understand.
So we need a bottling plant.
Well, we do. We have,
Or-
we have a bottling plant.
There we go, there we go. Yeah, let's-
Actually, that may be a fun thing to do. I mean, as ridiculous as it sounds, just talk to Ryan Brooks and say, is there any way we can put a poem from the poet laureate on
I think that's excellent.
this year's Brooks?
Because I mean, those bottles for Game of Thrones that Ommegang did,
Right.
those were highly sought after.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And even if we're doing it just for the city,
Yeah.
I mean, that's still a novelty item from a famous local
He
eater.
ships Brooks barbecue sauce
Yeah.
all over the country because all the alumni from both colleges, once in a while, get a hankering for
Yeah.
Brooks barbecue. So
Still
I think
don't
it would
understand
be that as it may, I think it
I'm not from
would
here.
be
Obvious blue ribbon all the way.
almost
Yes.
hilarious to have the city of Oneonta poet laureate haiku on a little space on that lake.
I think that's hysterical. You could also, like, there's so many hard cider places now, and breweries.
We need a brewery in Oneonta.
We do. Oh, and it actually makes beer?
So this is the first place.
You're on YouTube.
Yes, tell Luna, I think Beer Tree should move in there. That's my big idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how to make that happen because I'm.
Actually, that was, one of the owners is one of Elizabeth's former middle school students.
Right, yeah. I heard that Beer Tree were actually interested in it, but it was too expensive. But their head brewer is from Oneonta,
Yeah.
and they make fantastic beer, and that's a perfect place for a local brewery.
So check it, press down.
Yeah.
Plenty of room for
They tell Betsy to, call in a favor.
Okay, so, actually, I think it's pretty fun ideas we're talking about for the poet laureate. And, even if the poet laureate one year is Mrs. Johnson's second grade class at Riverside.
Yeah, well, and I guess the other thing is every year there could be a different plan of how the poem gets out there. It could go on a billboard over Main Street,
Right.
or it could be vinyl letters in a window somewhere, or it could be the Brooks Barbecue, and they could maybe even have a say in how they would like their
It
work.
should be like the new thing, instead of a Snapple cap with some random fact under it.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like,
You know what Snapple is? I know you're not from here.
that's not a national brand.
but I mean, like, what if you only gave it out or sold it or whatever at like 4th of July and first night?
Don't talk to
So
me,
you
talk to
tie
me.
it to this place in some way. No, that's a great idea.
Okay, so we're talking about poet laureate barbecue sauce.
Talk to Max Brooks.
And if we're worried about not having enough poets to cycle through every 2 years, we can always lessen the requirements, to make it fit Oneonta.
Right.
you know, just students in
I
general.
would imagine the first few times we do it, we're not gonna burn through every poet in 5 years, so.
No, but
No, maybe 20.
Yeah, so we can see how it goes.
That'll be someone else's problem by then.
That's fine.
Andrew maybe, he'll be still on the commission.
There's a pretty lively poetry slam community up here.
Yeah. We can reach out to like Bright Hill or someone about it as well.
Yeah.
Mhm. Well, at Oneonta, they have the poetry slam nights all the time.
Where? Where are they?
They're in the Hunt Union Club.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. That's always a good time.
Plenty of parking there. Okay, so I think is any more poet laureate talk?
No, I think we're good.
It seems that we've exhausted the old business. Is there any new business?
alleyways. So, sure, a lot of you have heard already, like, there was a tragic death recently. So, I mean, our alleyways in Center City are pretty gross. They're dark, they're dirty, they're unwelcoming, but they're a usable space if they're cleaned up. A lot of them are the backs of businesses. Throw some art up on those walls, lights, hose them down. It's going to make it a safer place. It's going to make it more beautiful. It's going to encourage people to walk there. Just something to think about moving forward, especially since our focus is downtown right now too.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I don't know what's going to be involved with it, but if we can get, I don't know if this really falls under us, but if we can get the city to be okay with businesses putting tables back there, using that space to expand what they have, I think we would be able to get a lot more support and funding from businesses to beautify these spaces.
I went to a meeting a couple weeks ago, and they talked about forming a business improvement district.
Okay.
And I think they formed a group to discuss that. That's been done or tried in the past couple of times.
Okay.
But that would be something we would have to negotiate with each individual property owner. And the city would, because even though it's an alleyway, their property extends a certain distance into that alleyway, whether it covers the whole thing or not. So the city has always had difficulties with being able to maintain those spaces, because they're basically private property. It's like your backyard, it's like.
Gotcha, yeah.
But I think that if they do form a business improvement district, that may be the easy way to do it, because then you're talking to one entity.
Yeah.
And that one entity would be charged with convincing each individual property owner that this would be a good idea. But I like that idea. It'd be nice to utilize that space for whatever cafes or, if somebody had too much space in their business on Main Street, they could open up a business in the back, or another old business can open in the back and utilize that outdoor space.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, let's keep that idea rolling, and if you can find something where cities have done that in the past, I know, was it Owego has big Main Street, and it backs onto the river, and for the longest time, the back of all those buildings that face the river, and across the river is the highway, so you're driving by, you see the river, and you see the back of all these buildings that are all dilapidated. But Owego put some time and effort into getting people to fix up the backs of those buildings. So now it looks, even though it's still the back of a building with fire escapes on it, but at least it looks nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that may be an idea to pursue, like long-term.
Yeah, but definitely long term. I was just throwing this out here just because I was thinking about it. And it might be something where we start with one section or one building. There's nothing in it right now, but the old Java Island, there's that walkway / alleyway right there. That's kind of the biggest / prettiest of all. But if we could start there, there's a huge wall there, blank for a mural.
2 huge walls.
Right.
Throw some chairs, lights, murals. It could be a really welcoming
They
space.
covered like the bottom part of those walls with that like pedal dash kind of
Oh, yeah.
cladding for some
Just gotta
reason.
get that F-150 to stop parking there.
Is that it?
That's actually, I think it's used for parking for some people who work at Community Bank.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd have to figure out all of that.
Yeah.
But it's big enough too, where you could really just fill that space with little pop-up art shows. You know,
Mhm.
have some people come in, set up, it's pretty wide. So what is it? There's Java Island on one side and then the bank on the other?
Community bank on the other, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, one thing, if you want to do something short, I know the history, like something quick and easy, the History Center on the other side of Deed Street has been talking with their two neighbors of paving the space from Deed Street over to Klugo's, the Parkview lot, parking lot. And I think that the building owner of Roots was interested, but the building between the two, they couldn't get in touch with because they have an absentee landlord. But maybe if we can figure out who owns it, we can do it as maybe the art commission and see if they would want to have a mural in that building, and maybe that would lead to the ability to pave that and do improvements there. And then the building behind it, which is a old telephone building, in fact, the former city manager Cortower lived there. Do you know who owns that, Carrie?
No,
Okay,
we can find it that way, the tax map.
okay.
Which one is that?
It's the old telephone building, Teleki's and.
Oh, that weird little like,
Yeah.
okay.
That may be a good spot too, to do an improvement, so maybe look at the idea that they could pave it and then put lighting in there so we could see the improvement, or we could see the mural that's there, and that may open up people's eyes to the possibilities.
Yeah, just start somewhere, show people what it could look like.
Yeah. Anything else, new business? And additional business? I always love that. Do we have any, we already talked about correspondence, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No, I can't believe nobody's writing letters about how great the first project was.
I have to check the Facebook comments for it.
That's not about how great it is. That's about how bad it is. What? I know, I'm just kidding.
Are people still whining about it?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, those old comments you were talking about?
Yeah, I was talking today about like, there were some comments early on, of course, there's half the people saying, I can't believe all the money that the city is wasting on this, on building that will get knocked down, blah, blah, blah. And then there are some other comments at the time saying, it's ridiculous that an artist is getting paid this little for a job this big, he should be paid more. And I was just commenting that James seems to be quite happy to keep doing more work without any more pay.
Yeah.
He's going above and beyond.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, he's building a portfolio, one hopes.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Do we know anything further about how long it will be up?
I don't.
I haven't heard anything.
Or the longer the better, I mean, but.
Yeah.
That's the fun, that's the mystery.
Mhm. So if there's no additional business, no other new business, can I get a motion? Do I need a motion for adjournment, or I could say